This is The Balanced Dilemma. We tackle the often uniquely, but not always, female dilemma, managing life, work, family, and self. I'm Maura Carlin.
And I'm Christy Derrico. At The Balanced Dilemma, we speak with women and men to hear their balanced stories. Our guests are entrepreneurs, reinventors, creators, executives, parents, and partners, telling us what we really want to know. How the heck did they manage that? And can you have it all and all at the same time?
How often do we measure success by our jobs, the promotions, the money, doing everything right, achieving all that's expected of us, only to find that it isn't enough? It isn't fulfilling us, or it isn't providing any joy. Well, that's the journey of Sarah Gormley, told in her recent book, The Order of Things. Now the owner of a contemporary art gallery in Columbus, Ohio, Sarah's story began on her family's Ohio farm that launched her into big cities and corporate success, where she was a marketing executive for global brands like Martha Stewart, IMAX, and Adobe. Yet something was missing. She returned to the farm when her mother was ill and dying, ultimately leading her to the joy missing from her life. Sarah, welcome to The Balanced Dilemma. I love the book. There are so many themes our listeners and your readers can relate to, like finding healing, choosing joy, loss and love, the potential paradox of success, female friendship, courage. I could go on. So let's just start at the beginning.
Thank you for having me. I'm so pleased to be here.
Another farm girl. We've had a few. Thank you for joining us. So let's start at the beginning.
Of course.
Tell us about growing up on the farm.
Well, like a lot of things, I think we appreciate things after the fact. And it was the only place I grew up. So I didn't know really how lucky I was to grow up in this gorgeous place, the rolling hills of southeastern Ohio. And it sounds so idyllic that you can't believe a childhood like that existed unless you lived it. And my parents, my mom, would say to my brother and sister and me, on a summer day, go have fun, be home before dark. And off we would go, doing goodness knows what. And, we left cars in the driveway unlocked in case a neighbor wanted to borrow one. There were no locks on the doors. So it was pretty magical.
And yet you couldn't wait to get out of there.
Oh, correct. I did not see myself as a farm girl. I was headed to New York City, come hell or high water, and I needed to get out of there.
And you say in the book that all of this made you feel you had to do everything right. What does that mean and why?
Well, I mean, it's a complicated question with a complicated answer. And the best I can do as a writer and a human being who's experienced this is that I deduced at a very young age, there's a scene in the book, I think I was 5, watching my dad help my sister with homework. And, I learned that if you give people the answers they want and get the test scores, and, I call it smart, skinny, and successful. And so I just was like, well, I know what I'll do. I'll just do those things. And I will accomplish those things.
You used a term in the book that I think we can relate to of, always going for the gold star.
Yeah, literally and metaphorically. And what happened to me is that it seemed, and I use air quotes here, easy for me to accomplish those things. I always got A's, A+, 100%. And it appeared easy. Well, at the same time, I was so focused on being that version of what I thought my parents and the world wanted, that the real me kind of didn't have a chance to emerge, because it took a lot of energy to be that other version of myself.
Outsiders probably looked at you as somebody who had, really made it. What happened there to make you feel that you didn't?
Well, it took quite a while. I mean, I had my stuff, it's in the book. I struggled with an eating disorder, and I didn't know what to call what I now recognize as pretty significant self-loathing. Um, that no matter what I did externally, no matter how many gold stars, I really felt like shit about myself. And it was getting worse as I got older and as I accomplished more things, until finally at about age 40, not about, at age 40, I decided I can't do this anymore. I can't feel this way anymore.
And when did these feelings start for you? High school, college, younger, older?
Um, Junior high school, I would say. And again, it's hard to look back and remember exactly how I felt in the moment, because I was in that striving mode. I was struggling with the eating disorder and still getting straight A's and SAT scores, and but nothing was fulfilling. None of those things actually made me feel good about myself. I just knew it was making other people think that I was doing great things. And it's hard to reconcile. I mean, because at the age and when I was doing it, I'm sure that I was like, oh, look what I did, because you factually accomplish things. But the negative voice was always getting louder. And it was almost like I thought that the voice was the thing driving me to succeed. I don't know if that makes sense.
And
it's complicated.
That brings us to a good question. Take us through your goals and rise and how that proceeded for you.
I just, I was kind of pragmatic. I was an English lit major, but didn't know how I could make money if I did something in the arts. My grandmother gave me my first piece of art when I graduated from DePauw. And so I just, I was like, oh, business school. That sounds like something one should do. If one wants to be successful, get an MBA. So I did that. And then I got my first job at an agency in Chicago, but I wanted to be in New York. So I moved to New York and got another job at a higher title. And it just went from there. And it's, climbing the corporate ladder, while not always easy, what success is because the system tells you. You have a salary, you have a title, you have a team size and responsibility within an organization. And the more you achieve, the bigger those things become.
And does it become harder to leave them, almost like a golden handcuff, that how could you imagine being away from that?
Yes, and I'm very honest about that. I don't miss a lot of things about the corporate grind, but I do miss the money.
So did your family and friends know you were this deeply unhappy?
No. And that's a question that makes me a little bit emotional sometimes. So bear with me. They didn't know. And honestly, I didn't know. I didn't, part of me just thought this is life, right? Like, and I looked around and thought, well, gee, I have these friends, I have this wonderful family, I have these great jobs, I'm good at what I do. I don't deserve, I should feel better, right? Why don't I feel better about myself? And so I had a hard time describing what I was going through, even to my therapist. So nobody knew. And excuse me, even my dear friends, there might have been some signs here or there, but I was very good at, the facade.
So one of the things you say is that last job you took at Adobe, you shouldn't have taken it. What did you mean by that?
Well, by that point, I had started therapy, and I knew my patterns of chasing external validation. And I knew that kind of the big corporate grind wasn't for me, but honestly, I didn't know what else to do. And so I thought, well, look, I've never worked in tech before. Adobe is such an admired, respected company. I was going on to a fantastic team, moving to San Francisco, big change. And I just did it. And in hindsight only, can I see that I absolutely should not have taken that job. But when I say I didn't know what else to do, I really didn't.
And
Like, this is what I was good at.
How old were you at that time?
42, 3.
Do you feel you were conflating job milestones with your personal fulfillment at that time?
100%. Well, no, I knew that had been my pattern, right? It's one thing in emotional work to intellectually understand something. It's a very different thing than to change the pattern or change how it feels in your body. And right at that time, intellectually, if my therapist had said to me, Sarah, taking the job at Adobe is just like taking the job at Girl Scouts, it's just like taking the job at Martha before that. It's the same pattern. But I didn't know what else to do. So that's absolutely, I knew that is what my struggle was, but I didn't quite know how to get out of it.
Were there milestones you felt you were missing? Like, I don't know, a partner, a family? Were those things that had been on your list of things you wanted?
That's a great question. And I just finished an essay about hiring a matchmaker because I thought if I could throw money at the problem, that would fix it, right? Yeah, there were. And I don't know that people ask, is that what we want? We just think things happen. And so I remember in my early and late 30s, as I watched friends get married and start to have children, I was kind of like, oh, I had hoped that would happen for me, and it didn't. And so I never asked, why not, really? I just said, well, thank goodness I'm good at working. I'll just continue doing that. And that can take a lot of time and energy in your life, working like that.
Definitely.
So your mother calls you and said, I'm sick, it doesn't look good. Is that...
Well, my sister called me and said she has tumors up and down her spine. So, and that was it. That was sort of the catalyst that I needed to kind of come to my senses about what are we doing here, right?
Right.
You know you have to get out of this pattern of climbing the corporate ladder. The universe is serving up this scenario. You lost your father a year ago, and now your mom is likely dying. You need to get your ass home.
So that wasn't a hard decision for you?
No. And there's a scene in the book where I suggest to her, I was in New York for meetings when my sister called, and I flew home immediately and sort of said to her, I think I'll come home to be with you. And I thought she would protest. I thought she would say, no, you've got this job. It's not going well. You've got to get out there and, stick with it and figure it out. And instead she said, I'd like that. I'd like that if you came home. So it's sort of like that was, again, a catalyzing moment. She knew how sick she was.
Right.
Did that surprise you that was her response?
It was the first moment of knowing how sick she was.
And sometimes parents see needs in their children that the children cannot see themselves. Is it possible your mom also saw in you that, you needed something different and you needed to be together in this moment?
Possibly. It's all so, the story and what I experienced and how it unfolded. I mean, it honestly sounds like a Hallmark movie. And so because it happened to me, I'm like, well, it's not. I don't know whether the universe was at work. Um, I, I don't know. I don't know that she knew, but that's the reason I came home. And then within a period of a couple of months, she got to watch me start falling in love with Camillus. And I'm
Right,
like,
that's the
I say in the
Hallmark
book,
movie part.
Ooh, that's the part.
but then
The
it's
music
like, and I
starts.
say in the book, who in the hell falls in love when her mother's dying? And the answer is, I don't know, but I did. So
Why would that surprise you? What did one have to do with the other?
well, I felt like I was at my lowest low. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a home. I didn't have a car. I was living in my childhood bedroom. I had just lost my beloved father, and now my beloved mother was dying. So I thought, well, I mean, I don't want to date me. I'm a mess. And so, no, I did not think it was like the perfect timing to fall in love.
And to use a phrase that you use in the book, you say life revealed itself. What does that mean?
Well, it's like all the cliche love songs are true. When you're ready, it will happen when you least expect it. And and it was just beautiful, and I feel so lucky, which is partially, but I didn't understand how something like that could happen, which honestly is why I wrote the book. I was trying to understand for myself, what in the hell happened to my life? And there are some universal themes. And so, yeah, that was sort of the genesis of the book, trying to answer that question and figure it out.
So you got to go home to a farm, and that was very different from the life you were leading. Christy, if I were to go home, I'd be 20 minutes away, still right outside New York City, and I don't think that would provide any difference.
And me over a bridge, but not much farther.
So what was it about the farm that made this happen that maybe wouldn't have happened for me and Christy had we been in similar circumstances? Is it simplicity? Is it being back in nature? Is it animals?
Fresh produce. I'm thinking of a whole bunch of things. Good eggs.
Good, clean living.
I always say I'm not very woo-woo, so this is about the most woo-woo thing I will ever say. And I haven't thought about it this way until you just brought it up. I mean, it's like I got to kind of go home to the farm and really experience the truest version of myself. Whew, it makes me cry. And I don't know how much the setting matters, but it's hard not to see profound beauty in life when you're surrounded by profound beauty in nature. So the farm was a pretty important setting for
it was almost happened. A character in your book.
Definitely. And again, when I went through the editing process and had some first readers, they were the ones who really encouraged me to amplify the descriptions of the farm, because they're like, Sarah, people don't grow up in places like this. So bring us there. And so that's what I tried to do.
And did you have a moment where you realized how special that place was, how your childhood was, that maybe you hadn't appreciated before?
Oh my gosh, so much. And honestly, it wasn't just that trip home. It was every trip home, over the years. And there's this big curve. You come down a hill and you curve around and cross the first bridge, and then look up and see this farmhouse on a hill. And I was like, wow, it's, and my brother owns the farm now. And so I'm there frequently, and it's just as magical every time.
Let me go. You have made a major permanent life pivot. You are in Ohio, in Columbus, not on the farm, and you are now own your own contemporary art gallery. What else has changed in your life? Like, how did that change? You're still running a business.
Yes, but it's a much smaller business with
Okay.
much smaller budgets and much, much smaller profits.
And you're in charge.
And I'm in charge. So, it's being an entrepreneur is so great in so many levels, but it can also be a little lonely. I had the greatest colleagues and teams, and I miss that part of corporate life. I really do. But it's people, there's an expression that I will butcher, but it's like freedom is time, or, I decide how my days are spent. And there might be a long list of 16 things. Like I just finished the schedule for the 2025, and I need to communicate with each artist. And, there's always a running list of things to do. But I'll tell you what, there are days when a nap is a lot more important than the list of things to do. And I get to decide how I spend my time. And that's a real gift.
And would you call that balance, or finding some measure of balance, since it is the balance dilemma?
I do think it's balance. And I've created, the most shocking thing for me is that my life now revolves around almost pure creativity, visual arts at the gallery, and then the book and writing endeavors. And so, yes, it's work, but the subject matter and the conversations I'm having about the work are, it's more fulfilling to me. And so the balance comes in not only about being able to take a nap on occasion when I want, but the freeing up of the unnecessary stress, I would say. It's like you can kind of decide what's going to get your energy, if that makes sense.
And speaking about energy, we've interviewed a lot of women with different businesses, all of which have been so inspiring to us. How did you come upon an art gallery? What was the genesis of that little entrepreneurial endeavor?
Well, it's really another one of those crazy stories. So my grandmother bought me my first piece of art. I'm looking at it right now in my living room. And when I graduated from undergrad, and at that moment I thought, that's pretty magic, right? This classmate of mine painted something. I fell in love with it so much that I asked her to buy it for me. Like, wow, if you could get to do that in life, that's pretty cool. And then I just went on my way. I didn't pursue a career in the arts. Now there are degrees in arts management. But I started collecting art, and not blue chip art. I started collecting what I could afford based on where I was in my life. And it was just always a hobby and something I was really passionate about. And so when I moved to Columbus, I took a full year off. When I went to the farm, I decided I will not work in any way for a full year to free myself up and see where I land.
Were you on
so at
leave?
The end of that,
were you on leave, or did you quit?
They actually fired me, but it's a mutual step.
Minor technicality.
Right.
Yeah, I had some mixed feelings about it at the time, but the job wasn't working, period. So I took a full year off, and then I didn't really know what to do. I started doing some consulting work, and guess what? It felt very corporate. I was making slides and doing strategy documents. And somebody in Columbus, Ohio, overheard me talking about this dream of mine to open a pop-up gallery, and reached out and said he had a space he wanted me to see. Wow. And that's it. And wow. I said, okay. And I walked down the street, saw this beautiful space. This was in February of 19. And he said, well, when do you think you could be open? Again, I was still thinking pop-up, like get it out of my system, this desire to try running an art gallery. So in February, he said, when could you be ready? And I thought, well, I don't know, May. I need a few months. And he said, let's aim for April. So
Wow.
I
Ambitious.
said,
Yeah.
okay. And that was it. I designed a logo, built a website, called a woman I knew in New York who's a phenomenal photographer and said, would you like to have your first solo exhibition in Columbus, Ohio? And I just kept saying yes to things.
And that all comes from a background in marketing and all the things that you were able to do and knew how to do.
Well, and also allowing myself to make it up as I go.
Right.
Right. I can be a fairly rigid type A research data driven decision maker. And instead, this time I said, let's just try. We'll figure it out. And it's been an absolute blast. And I don't know how successful I am. I mean, it's a gorgeous, wonderful gallery. I'm super proud of it, but it's hard. It's a very hard business.
But you didn't have connections in the art world. Like you drew upon a friend for that first exhibition. But how did it get started with the connections you need for doing art exhibitions?
Well, Columbus is a fantastic city. Number one, there's my plug for Columbus. I talked to other gallerists who were so supportive. And if I had questions, they helped. There are two, the Ohio State and CCAD both have incredible art school programs. And so there's a ton of talent located here. And so I started visiting studios, researching artists, asking them if they wanted to join the program or try out a show with me. And it went from there. And now I am approached by artists almost daily.
Good.
And you're an author. And let's just talk about the book and start with the title. What does the title mean? The Order of Things.
So that wasn't the first title, FYI. So I wrote the first manuscript, got some feedback from two different agents, and then narrowed the story. And I thought about why I was writing the book and what I was trying to figure out. And what you're trying to do is make sense of things, right? That's what a book does. That's what a story does. It brings you along. And we also, as human beings, I think, we try to make the connections. This happened and that happened, and you look for causes. And what I was trying to figure out is that in my own life, I think some of the things that I thought were causes were symptoms of something else. And things don't always make sense, and things don't always follow a linear line. Certainly they do in time, but there's an order, there's the timeline order, and then there's the order of magnitude. And only when you look back at something do you realize something that seemed very minor might have been a very big thing in terms of the order of magnitude. So that's what the title alludes to.
Now, your relationship with your mother was a big part of the book. How do you think she would have felt about your life now and the book?
Well, first of all, she and my father both knew and adored Camillus. That's my partner, who you meet in the book. And they had watched me struggle in my attempts to date over the years. So they would have been thrilled about that. Mom could be tough. And of course she wanted me to be happy, but I think she might still say, hey, are you going to go get a real job again? Is this gallery thing out of your system? So, I don't know. And I also, to be super candid and transparent, I don't know if I would have written this exact book if she was still alive. I think the poignancy of untangling our relationship and understanding things, it happened in no small way because I came home to be with her when she was dying. So yeah, it's messy.
Yeah, but what a gift, right? What a gift that you
Oh,
had those days with her.
such a gift. And she managed, and I say that intentionally, she managed her death so beautifully, I think entirely to make it easier on us. And that it's pretty powerful. So she knew what was happening. She decided to stop treatment in January. I went home in November. We did rounds of chemo. She decided to stop treatment in January and passed in February. But she kind of did it her way. And she got to be at the farm, which was her favorite place in the world. So,
How brave.
yes.
So we get to now. You have any
Okay.
new aspirations? What's on the horizon for you now, Sarah?
Well, I haven't fully committed, but I am thinking about a second book, and we'll see. It's a really interesting journey and experience of the writing and the publishing. Those are two different things.
Yeah, so we want you to tell us about that.
Yeah, path to publication is something we love hearing about.
So my path to publication was, I thought I was doing the traditional big publishing house, get an agent, sell the book. I had 2 agents who were interested in, who gave me feedback, which I took and did revisions. But then when I knew the book was finished and I knew that this was my book, I decided to do it my way, because I'm also impatient. And I had already been invested in the process and the project for 3.5 years. And I'm like, I can't wait. I can't wait to try to get an agent. And then the agent will have feedback. And then we'll shop it around. And then you'll be assigned an editor. So I was looking at 18 months or 2 more years. And I was like, no, this is my book. And I kind of, excuse my French, I didn't want anyone to fuck around with it. And so I did, technically it's the hybrid. I hired Girl Friday Productions out of Seattle, amazing. And they took me through the process.
Okay.
Cool.
That's
And we love the cover. It's very your aesthetic and artistic and beautiful.
Yes, the cover is a local artist. He's not on my roster either, Joey Monsoon, but he does these really intricate, kind of bizarre portraits of people. So that's his work.
So having been in the corporate world, having changed your life completely, what advice would you give to someone who's in the middle of it, who might be struggling?
Keep going. I know that sounds cliche and obvious, but if you listen to yourself and follow what your instincts are telling you, I'm not saying you'll land where you need to land immediately. It might be the thing that gets you to the next thing, but just try. There's a certain amount of joy in just trying. And that would be my advice. Trust yourself.
I have a question for you. Do you think it's possible to find fulfillment and to end up with the life that you have now in that fast track lane in the big city life? Or did you think it was geographically necessary for you to go through that process relocating?
That is such a good question. And one of my best friends would disagree with me, because all along she was like, you need to get home to Ohio, right? And I think if for whatever reason today I went back to a big job in a big city, I think I am so changed from the emotional work I've done in therapy that I would regard the work differently. I don't know if that makes sense, but I sometimes say, I expected something out of it. Wasn't my job's job to make me feel good about myself. So no job could be fulfilling. And now that I know that and I've gone through that change, I think I could probably find a super interesting job. I'm not going to lie to you. I love not having to go to bullshit meetings. I love not having to act like I'm agreeing with the CEO, even when I don't, right? Which sometimes you have to do in corporate settings. But I think I could be fulfilled by other things because I know what to look for.
So
Does that sound woo-woo?
No, but I think you've answered one other question we often ask our guests. Advice you'd give to your 25-year-old self. So what you just said, is that what you tell your 25-year-old self, to find that path, not through work, but through yourself?
Absolutely. Right. I would hand my 25-year-old self my book and say, don't wait, right? Don't wait. You are suffering. Admit that you want something to change. That's what I'm learning through my conversations. So many of us, especially women, we're ashamed to admit that something's amiss. And you miss full swaths of life with this suffering that's unnecessary. So that's what I would say. Be kinder to yourself and take better care of yourself.
And allow your house to be a little messy. So I have a question. Can you have it all and all at the same time?
I don't even know, I think having it all is a term, it's kind of like happiness. The expression is, to me, a little bit meaningless. I'm I don't know. I don't even know what having it all is. It's are there moments of fulfillment and joy? And what can you do to recalibrate your life so that you are filled up? And, I feel like people are like, shut up, Sarah. We don't want to hear about your fabulous life. It's not like I don't have hard times and, I have a partner, so there's stuff there. But it's about answering the question, what do you really want? And making sure you're doing what you need to do to have that in your life. That's how I view it. So it's not, I don't think that I'm a person who has it all ever. And that's not a goal of mine.
Okay. So the order of things. Tell people where they can get the book.
Well, the easiest place is Amazon, but we also love to support local bookshops, so have them order it for you. Barnes & Noble, Walmart has it, bookshop.org has it, and they give money back to local bookstores. So pretty much wherever books are sold, and you can find out everything you need to know about the book at my website, which is sarahgormley.com. And then everything about the gallery is at sarahgormleygallery.com.
And will there be a Hallmark movie?
I don't think it's Hallmark, but I am going to manifest right now and share with you that I'm working on a treatment and a first episode for a potential series. So, which
Awesome.
I will pitch to places like Netflix. So we'll see.
And who will play Maura and I in the episode when you're interviewed on a syndicated podcast?
We're available.
We are.
Let me know. Talent fees.
Sarah, it's been great talking to you. Thank you for spending this time with us.
Absolutely.
Thank you
both so much.
Please follow us, listen to us, and rate us on our platforms, Spotify, Apple, and our website, thebalanceddilemma.com, where you can also subscribe to our newsletter and email us your suggestions. There's no cost, but it means a lot to us.